consequences of the marriage drop.
In just 6 years, half of every kindergarten class in this country is going to be the children of single moms.
And if the old model of marriage is less attractive, how about a new model?
What you're describing is a move away from a one-size-fits-all contract that's written by the church to a couple sitting down and writing their own contract.
Freakonomics Radio is produced by WNYC and Dubner Productions. Our staff includes David Herman, Greg Rosalski, Greta Cohn, Beret Lamb, Susie Lechtenberg, and Chris Bannon. If you want more Freakonomics Radio, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or go to Freakonomics.com, where you'll find lots of radio, a blog, the books, and more.
So should I do it full out? Ready?
Knowledge. 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 Knowledge is what brings us together today.
Well, that was good.
Freakonomics Radio is supported by Betterment, an online investment manager designed to transform the way you invest. With cutting-edge technology to optimize your returns, save you time, and minimize your taxes. To upgrade your investment approach today, visit betterment.com/free.
In last week's episode, we learned that there are a lot of different reasons why people get married.
We got married because we love each other.
To have a family, to kind of continue with the tradition.
I'm Catholic, so tradition is a big part of our lives. In India, it is a social thing to get married.
His visa was expiring, and so it was either pay for him to go out of the country to get a new visa, or we could get married and have a party.
We just finally decided it was easier to conform.
And there are a lot of reasons why people don't get married.
Marriage it's a big commitment.
It doesn't make sense, the whole institution of marriage.
I prefer to being single than free. I think finding a partner is damn hard.
Why people get married? I have no idea.
And a lot of people asking me why I'm not getting married. You're beautiful and this and that. It doesn't work for me.
Which brings us to today's program, Why Marry? Part 2, in which we continue to bust the myths of modern marriage and, while we're at it, come up with a whole new idea of what marriage could be.
When I was young, I used to think that might be a cool thing to do, but I don't think it's such a good idea anymore.
It's a little unromantic to me.
It sounds a bit too contractual to me.
That's hilarious. From WNYC, this is Freakonomics Radio, the podcast that explores the hidden side of everything. Here's your host, Stephen Dubner.
In our last episode, we heard from the University of Michigan economist Justin Wolfers about how marriage today is fundamentally different than it was 50 or 60 years ago. It moved from a factory model with the husband as CEO and the wife as homemaker and with what economists call production complementarities to something else.
We've moved to what economists would call consumption complementarities. We have more time, more money, and so you want to spend it with someone that you'll enjoy, so someone with similar interests and passions. We call this the model of hedonic marriage, but really it's a lot more familiar than that. This is just economists giving a jargon name to love. So you want someone actually who's remarkably similar to you or has similar passions that you do. So it fundamentally changes who marries who.
It also changed how many people marry. Here's the Harvard economist Claudia Gold.
Marriage, let's face it, is on the decline in many different ways.
That's right. Even though marriage is still more popular in the U.S. than in many wealthy countries, our marriage rate is at an all-time low. Okay, so who's still getting married and who isn't? Ivory Toldson teaches counseling psychology at Howard University and is a research analyst at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
People who are less educated tend to be married less than higher incomes are more likely to be married than those who have lower incomes. And people in smaller cities are more likely to be married than people in larger cities. And that's true across all races.
So education and income are correlated with marriage rates, which may not be so surprising, considering what Justin Wolfers told us earlier.
The hard to employ, the selfish, would all be far less likely to be marriageable, and therefore less likely to be married than others.
Okay, what other traits affect marriage rates? Well, religion is still a driving force toward marriage, and as the U.S. grows less religious, that means less marriage. This may also explain why Western Europe has even lower marriage rates than ours. And what about immigrants to the U.S.? First-generation immigrants are more likely to marry. They may be more religious or traditional than their U.S. counterparts, but those numbers dip dramatically for the second and third generations. One area where marriage is rising is among gay couples, not surprisingly, since same-sex marriage has only recently been allowed. Since 2004, there have been an estimated 71,000 same-sex marriages in the U.S., with many more expected. So, not a huge number, but an upsurge nonetheless. And what about marriage rates by race? Let's look at the breakdown for men. Roughly 59% of Asian men in the U.S. are married, followed by white men at 54%, Hispanic men at 45%, and black men at just 36%. That low number for black men is especially an issue for black women.
I am Nina Bruce. I am a native Baltimorean, born and raised.
Like Nina Bruce.
I'm 32. I work for the government, and I am actively dating in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. People want to know why you're single, which is a crazy question because you can't answer that sometimes, and they want to know what you're doing about it. So I've done everything. Speed dating, I did a lock and key party, Match.com, I was in eHarmony, and of course friends love to set me up. Like, oh, I know the perfect person for you. Everybody knows the perfect person for you.
We asked Bruce why she wants to get married.
For me, marriage is important for a couple reasons. I would love to have that bond with someone. I think that I know that is the core of why I want to get married. And also, economically, I want to have kids, and I want to have kids on my own.
But she hasn't been having much success.
It's hard to find someone who's in the same playing field. I mean someone who is not necessarily of the same background, but someone who, A, wants to get married, who, B, is able to get married or be in a relationship, a healthy relationship, whether it be financially, physically, or mentally, even spiritually. It is important to me to date within my race. I think there's a lot of pressure. I would be open to dating outside of my race, but I think there's a lot of pressure.
Nina Bruce is worried about the availability of eligible black men to marry. Ivory Toldson, the Howard scholar we heard from earlier, says that black men are overrepresented in the categories associated with not being married, lower income, education, and living in bigger cities. But Toldson also says that the ratio of available black men to women in the U.S. is not as skewed as most people think.
So you have about 800,000 more black women with at least a bachelor's degree than there are black men. But there are more black men, about 300,000 more black men who have incomes of $70,000 than black women.
Toldson analyzed data from Atlanta and Washington, D.C.
Both of these cities are seen as, kind of these meccas of progressive black people. And so there was a lot of talk about, the ratio. What is the ratio of black women to black men in these cities? And you typically hear things like 12 to 1, 15 to 1. If you all went to either one of these cities and just asked someone randomly on the streets, what's the ratio of black women to black men in the city? I guarantee you, unless they have read my research, they would say something above 10 to 1.
Guarantee us? All right, we'll take him on that. We asked a bunch of people in Atlanta how many marriageable black women there are for every black man.
Ratio
say around 2 to 1.
I found a lot of women here have gotten to the point where they've dated so many guys that they're like, I've been flaked over so many times, it wouldn't hurt to try dating a female.
I think people's guard is up. Incarceration having a big factor in it as well, and maybe even, people not being employed.
Okay, and here's Ivory Toldson with the real answer.
So the true ratio in both of these cities is 1.3 to 1. Then, of course, if you get into the educated population, you'll see the ratio get even more skewed, and it goes up to about 1.8 to 1 in Atlanta and 1.5 to 1 in Washington, D.C. If you're a young black woman and you want an educated black man, these corrected ratios may give you some comfort, but in real time, it still can be a challenge. I'm not trying to put my brothers out there, but I know that some successful black men who are exposed to information like there's a 15 to 1 ratio in the city that you live in, they become less committal in relationships and more restrictive in what they believe they deserve. This is certainly not true at all, but if we're just looking at the entire landscape and how a lot of this information could be misused, that there is a tendency for some men to exploit the data.
So as you can see, whenever you look at one big story about marriage, there are dozens of small ones lurking just beneath it. And yes, we have more of those stories coming up on Freakonomics Radio. If the marriage rate is so low, does that mean the birth rate is also low?
In just 6 years, half of every kindergarten class in this country is going to be the children of single moms.
And the old model of marriage just isn't attractive anymore. How about a new one?
What you're describing is a move away from a one-size-fits-all contract that's written by the church to a couple sitting down and writing their own contract.
Freakonomics Radio is supported by Lumosity.com, designed by neuroscientists to work out your brain in a fun and challenging way. Lumosity offers personalized training programs to challenge your memory, attention, or processing speed. Lumosity users can train from anywhere with a computer or from an iPhone or iPad using the Lumosity app. Visit Lumosity.com, click the Start Training button to start playing today, and select Freakonomics Radio from the drop-down menu.
Freakonomics Radio is supported by NatureBox, a subscription service dedicated to smarter snacking. With a few clicks, snacks like banana bread granola and honey crunch crisps are delivered right to members' doors. Members discover new treats in each monthly box, or they make their own selections. For 50% off first orders, visit naturebox.com/freak.
From WNYC, this is Freakonomics Radio. Here's your host, Stephen Dubner.
As we've been hearing today, marriage has many clauses and, therefore, many consequences, which means that politicians will inevitably find something to say about it. Here's Marco Rubio, the Republican U.S. Senator from Florida.
The greatest tool to lift people, to lift children and families from poverty, is one that decreases the probability of child poverty by 82%.